So, like you said, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Wharry. Work for Hoober's. For those of you that do know me, I'm surprised you volunteered to sit in here for the next hour. So, I follow a very different format. I really don't like PowerPoints at all. I like to kind of talk to whoever's in the room. So, that said, please ask a lot of questions. The only thing that are off limits are politics and religion. Aside from that, ask anything. There'll probably be some other people in the room that will have input on questions or have the same questions as you do. So if I just stand here and talk to you, you'll learn about what I want to talk about. And that may not be what you want to learn. So please ask questions. Let's make it interactive. I do a lot better in that role than what I do just standing up and talking. So what I'd like to talk about is kind of what's new mechanically this year with precision ag, with ag maybe a little bit in general. I don't want to focus too much on data. Dr. Fulton's got a presentation on that this afternoon and a presentation on using that information tomorrow. So I kind of want to stay away from that a little bit. So I'm going to try and stick more to the mechanical side of things and how to get information to and from machines and leave all the decision making to those that know that end of it. So first off, how many in here are co-ops, service providers? All right, how many growers do we have in the room? Okay, a few more than the last one, good. What does everybody else do? Because that was like half of you. University people? NRCS, okay. Okay. So one of the things I really jump up and down on is yield information. That's kind of what I personally feel, anything precision ag related, it all starts at the combine. I'm real particular about good calibrations. How many people in here help out with or do combine calibrations in the fall for information? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A couple of you. When you're calibrating corn, how many loads do you use?
The worst part we find is the different moistures. We can get one dialed in, say on 16% corn. When he goes across the driveway and gets 18% corn, and he runs it on the weigh wagon, there you go again. We got to tweak it a little.
Yep.
Don't know why. I'm probably going to make you mad. The John Deere's, the Green Stars, if we get one of them and mess with it and weigh 20 times this year and get it dialed in, usually we don't ever touch the Deere's again.
Okay.
And then
So I try and stay relatively objective as far as not bashing one machinery manufacturer over another and talking like this. It's hard for me because 364 days a year I do. But I've got to be nice today and play well with others. So,
Well, I'm not bashing anybody. I'm just saying in general, my experience.
okay. We had a similar discussion in the first session. It was more about getting data in and out of displays, but so yes, that is correct. So moisture plays a big fact. If I go out to a machine to calibrate it, first thing I'm doing is getting the moisture correct on it. And I have a handheld moisture tester. I calibrate it at the mill, probably not calibrated at the customer's mill. So I like them to start harvesting and tell me what the moisture is running, and we set the machine to that because they're not getting paid for a handheld tester. You're getting paid off whatever the mill's paying you and what the mill's telling you it is. So that's always my starting point. Always moisture first. Once that's done, I like to do 5 or 6 loads. Basically, I'll go out and run the combine just as hard as it can take it without spitting it out the back. And then I'll work down in flow from there. And the way I work down in flow ranges, because the relationship of force to yield is not a straight line, it's a curve. So if you don't have a bunch of data points on that curve, you'll be accurate wherever you calibrate it, but if you're at a different flow rate from where you calibrate it, it's going to be a little high or a little low. So I like to do different flow rates, and I do that by speed. I take it as hard as the combine will take it, which most places you'll find 4.5, 5 miles an hour if the head's appropriately sized to the combine. And then step down 4.5, 4, 3.5, 3. If it's a year like this where under irrigated corn you can be 350 bushels and then you hit the corners and you're under 100, I'll do more calibrations because I need more calibrations at that low flow value. And then to what you said about having differences in moisture, you almost have to do 2 calibrations. You need to do a calibration for 20% and above, 20% and below. I find more variance. I deal with ag leader monitors and case monitors more than anything else. But you find that 20% break point, you don't find a lot of variance below that, or you don't find a lot of variance if you're above that. But we do set up 2 different calibrations for 2 different corns to really remain accurate. And then having that accurate yield data gives you something that you can go back and look at. You know, that's the first starting point. Okay, I planted 2 different varieties. What did variety A do on this dirt as opposed to variety B? You can have weight wagons and you can weigh each sample out, but you don't really know, like looking at that yield map and really seeing what it did. You can identify if there were some variances within your trial, what the issues were maybe, or at least give you a place to go look at it. So yield maps are something I beat on. Good calibrations on combines, something I jump up on the screen, do the work right. Also, if you've got customers that are coming to you, or if you're the grower, save yourself a ton of headache and get your grower farm and field structure cleaned up. So when you're saving data, older monitors, it's a little more difficult because they just save it by fields and loads. Most newer monitors, you've got a grower, you've got a farm, you've got a field, and then you can separate it into different loads. But I don't care if it's green, yellow, red, silver, doesn't make any difference. That monitor, you want to separate that information apart so that you can bring it into software and look at it correctly. That is a big deal as far as getting good data out of a machine. Like I said, there could be discussions on what to do with that data after this. I don't want to get into that because that's not my, I'm a machine guy, I'm an electronics guy. Out in the field is where I belong. Trying to make decisions on it is absolutely not where I belong. So what we've seen new this year across several platforms is communications. So really it started with sprayers a year or 2 ago to where sprayers were sending their information in real time. With Raven, we saw it with the Slingshot platform, John Deere, JD Link. Ag Leader started with their Agfinity platform. So that platform carries across to anything you do with it. So now, instead of collecting all the information on the USB stick that's in your monitor, or compact flash card, or SRAM card, or however far back you want to go, instead of collecting all that information there, it's all going to the cloud, and it's available to somebody in the office real time. Does 2 things. It allows you some real-time billing if you're a provider. As soon as your guys out there in the field has done that job, that information sitting back in the office, they can go ahead and process that ticket and bill it. Huge efficiencies there and accuracies. You don't have things get billed correctly and on time. There's a lot less dispute over jobs that were done rather than billing it 6 months later, or however things slip through cracks. It happens. The other thing is data safety. We collect data. We've collected data for years. How long has that card been in that combine monitor? Has it been in there 4 years, 5 years? Is it approaching full? All of a sudden, that card shorts out. Gone. All your data's gone. So at least once a year, I'm a big fan of pull that USB. At the end of the year, pull your USB stick out, pull your card, whatever you've got. Pull it out, throw it in the safe, put a new one in. The USB stick's $5. Why would you even try and copy data, save data, erase the card, put it back in there? A lot of these storage devices have a life. They're designed for X number of writes to the card. Once you hit X number of writes, then you're risking losing all your information. So if they have a life, just swap them out. They're cheap. That's a good backup. Even if you read all your information into software after the fact, you know, that card's sitting in the safe, your computer,
Fall.
whatever, you've got a backup of your information. So, we're seeing a lot of management platforms now, you know, be it John Deere's platform, be it Ag Leader, be it Case, they're all going to cloud-based information management software. Once you go to cloud-based, yeah, you're storing your information on a server somewhere. Theoretically, it's backed up, but computers crash, bad things happen. If you've got hard copies of stuff on that stick safely put away somewhere, I'm a little particular about keeping, or peculiar, you use whichever word applies, but I like to keep backups of things. I work with enough electronics every day that I don't 100% trust them. So good data management will definitely help you out in the long run.
I remember the old days when a computer just died. We don't know why, we don't know where it went, it's just gone.
Those aren't the good old days, those are current.
Well, but it's just like now, it's way easy to back them up, like on iPads.
Yep.
Here we go again, a Droid or an iPad, you know, or an iPhone or a Droid.
Yep.
It's so easy to back things up.
Yep.
I'd like to change gears.
Okay.
What about these new yield monitors on harvesters?
Cover crops that we're putting.
Harvesters.
Well, we've got deers and we've got claws.
Forage harvesters. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Some,
I don't understand why one of them can be right on the money and one of them ain't even in the ballpark. And the sad part is the deer one is a couple years old, and when he chops, he can send me yield maps. And I can look at the farmer's field and probably make decisions that the farmer should be making, but I can decide, for example, that one half of the field I want to throw some extra nitrogen in because it just always produces more.
Yep. So there you go, looking at historical data and making a decision based off of that. So I can't talk real specifically to that because obviously I don't do a lot of work with John Deere, and I am around some Claas harvesters, and I know they run through the CBIS monitor, and they do stream their information to the cloud. I know traditionally there have been some challenges as far as how they record that data and how it processes into software, and it can do some crazy.
Lake Erie has turned green.
Different. I know Ag Leader has come with a, they can plug into the CAN bus of that chopper, of that Claas chopper, and they can pick up the yield information. Once it comes into that display, it's a lot easier to manipulate around. Once it's presented on there, I know we can handle that, and we're not going to have some crazy stuff come out of it. But I don't deal with a whole lot, or my counterparts up north deal with a few more forage harvesters than I do. You know, there's obviously just not a whole lot of that down here through the eastern shore. And then as we get to the western shore, we start talking about peanuts and cotton, so that's a whole different ball of wax. But
Mine used to be dairy cows, and it's going up in stock cattle now.
okay,
But they just have always grown, you know, corn, so they're going to continue.
yep,
And they're going to continue chopping it.
okay, it's chopping it for silage. So
Yeah, and just here in the last couple of years, you know, that information has become available.
yes, and basically it's deer or it's Claas as far as if you want a forage harvester solution, forage harvesting mapping solution. So that's not changing gears too much. That's still harvesting. So, but that's the thing is what you're seeing with ag is you're seeing connectivity. You're seeing, I mean, right now a lot of John Deere tractors you've got built-in modems in them, so they're connected to the internet. The next model year of Case, you're going to see that in them. AGCO, you're seeing it. There's a big push towards machine connectivity from a machine support standpoint. That allows us to see fault codes. We can see machine performance. You can evaluate if you see I mean, it'll even pop up alerts if somebody's just riding the clutch on something and burning the clutch up, you'll get an alert that that's happening. There have been cases where you've been able to call a customer and say, hey, get your foot off of that left pedal because you're burning the clutch up, and if it fails, it's not going to get covered under warranty because you know what that machine's doing. You know the fault of that machine. That's good and bad. That's kind of Big Brother-ish, but by the same token, if a dealership can prevent you from having downtime, prevent you from having a failure, what's, is it invasion of privacy or is it helpfulness? And there's a lot of discussion on that as to where it falls.
Are you all seeing, how am I gonna word this? The computer glitches that we're seeing with trucks in our agricultural use of them. New trucks are virtually useless to us. We're having to go back and buy 2004 model trucks.
So you're buying,
refurb them.
Yep.
And put our spreader beds and stuff on them.
yep, because you're having engine problems, you're having engines shut down, you're having
We don't know what's going on.
urea issues, stuff like that.
Come out there with this thing, plug into it. Oh, it was a fault code. It said it was hot, but it wasn't really. And then he gets in his vehicle, he drives off, and an hour later the truck does it again.
Yep. So, yes, you see more of that. Anything electronic is going to have more faults and alerts because it's more sensitive. It's paying attention to more things than what you were paying attention. You have a set of gauges on the dash, but it's watching 1,000 things, not those 10. So it'll throw more fault codes. It'll pay more attention. I will say, based on what I've heard from growers I work with that complain about over-the-road trucks and how they're looking for, they don't want to go buy a new truck. They want to buy a new chassis and throw an old motor in it. They want old mechanical motors. They don't want stuff with regen exhaust systems. They don't want urea. I would say we don't have as much trouble as the over-the-road industry has for whatever reason because we operate in a more difficult environment.
Well, see, that's kind of what we're doing. We're buying road trucks and then just modifying them to do our job, and they're just not taking the modification like they used to.
Right. You can't get away with some of it with some of the newer stuff. So yes, connectivity, and that being able to remote into things, that's something that's just coming more and more. You're going to see it as new machines come out, new generations of machines come out. We're seeing to where they're a lot more connected. And Case made a big splash this year at the farm show when they released their autonomous tractor. We're going to see that thing? No chance. Legally, there's no possible way they're going to put that thing out. It was a neat showstopper. It was a neat science project. It does work, but from a legal standpoint, are you going to turn that thing loose? In our fields around here especially, we're not going to turn something like that loose. I mean, they're talking out there where they're on a quarter section and there's nothing around to get in trouble with. It can stay within the farm and do its thing. We don't farm within a farm boundary here, so that sort of technology is neat. I think it's a good indicator of probably where the industry's going. You're going to have pilots and autonomous tractors following a pilot operator, but you can't replace an operator. There's just too much, I almost want to say experience as far as running a planter and knowing what you're seeing, running a sprayer, being able to look and evaluate situations that they're just not there with autonomous concepts yet. And Kinsey's had their self-piloted grain cart and their autonomous planter tractor that's been on the books for 3 years. It's been out running, and it's not coming to fruition. It's a neat engineering project. It's a fun, we can do this, but it's not reality at this point. Will we see it in our lifetime? Yeah, probably. But it's not reality here yet. And legally, I mean, there's so much liability issues with that. That's going to keep that from coming out. So, anybody have any other questions kind of in that general realm? Or everybody just wants lunch?
Can you just talk about that tractor at the show? Like, obviously, I haven't seen it. What kind of capabilities does it have now?
So basically, it is a completely autonomous tractor. You can take your iPad and you can tell it, if it's hooked up to a planter, You can tell it, go down to this field and go plant it.
Is it visual though? Like, is there like a camera on it?
It is visual, LiDAR, GPS, it's got a whole bunch of various sensor packages on it. If it is out in the field and encounters something that it determines needs to be avoided, it will stop and send a help request to its operator, essentially. So it's autonomous, but it's not. If it encounters something that's out of the ordinary, it'll stop and send a help message. And you can take your iPad and say, oh, and you can look. I mean, you look right on there at the camera, and maybe it's just a tall weed sticking up or a stalk of corn that didn't get mowed down. You can just tell it to avoid or tell it to just plow over, and it will then proceed on with what it's doing. Grain cart operation, it'll follow a combine. So, and it can do all this completely unaided. I mean, there's no cab on it at all. There's a no cab model and there's a cab model, but there's too much. You obviously have to nurse it. I mean, you gotta give it fertilizer, you gotta give it seed, you gotta give it fuel. But you can have one guy in the field tending to those operations, and you could have multiple tractors out there. I can see out in Canada, out in the Dakotas, where you could have 4 or 5 of these things out planting and running, and one person tending to seed needs and fuel and that sort of thing, and just overseeing the operation. I do see that as being a lot more potential and a lot closer to reality for that than here on the eastern farms.
On the same line, how do they get the machine from field to field? I mean, that's a great idea. Like, autonomous farming is great. If you're there, that's where you go.
Yeah.
Every day, but you rank around over 3 counties.
Well, and that's what I said. It's designed as an out west machine. It's designed to go to a section and just stay there. So it can drive itself down roads that are on farms. On the farm. I mean, there's a boundary that it's not allowed to cross.
Right, because the biggest variable here are people, right?
Yes. The people on the road. We're very safe in the equipment going down the road. It's all the other crazy people around us that cause the problems. So that's why it's not. Farming here is a lot different than farming out west. It's a completely different animal. We deal with smaller field sizes. We deal with a lot of population around us. When you talk about spraying, we've been using, Case calls it Aim Command. Capstan, who made it, calls it Synchro. It's blended pulse spraying. Now Raven makes it, calls it Hawkeye. John Deere calls it Exact Apply. It's available from the factory on red sprayers, green sprayers, yellow sprayers. That blended pulse technology in spraying and this is really the first year it's been available across the board as a factory option on any manufacturers. But that allows you to really control your spray pressure and do a much more cautious job spraying. You get out around St. Michael's, you get around some of the high dollar estates, you want to spray, you can control your pressures, control your drift. You get into vegetable work up in New Jersey, we see it used a lot, controlling drift between vegetables and grain crops. You've got your neighbors he's planted corn right next to your tomatoes. You've got to go spray it, you've got to make sure you're not burning his crop off. So that's the biggest thing we see that's so different with us as opposed to out west, is we have to farm around other people.
Touch on something you spoke about earlier, and it's a big difference between where precision agriculture was developed in the West and where it's applied here, and that's the farm data structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
The operation I worked for, we had 9,000 acres, 150 landowners, and over 6,000 fields. So to put that in a monitor and expect my operators to change every time, it's an unrealistic expectation. So if I try to use the data management structure that's developed in a section where it is easy to pick, I'm going to be in this field for 2 days. So,
Right.
So we just had farm, and that's where we stop. We don't go down to the field level.
Okay.
There's all these issues with sharing data between agencies. And I know you're familiar with it.
Oh, yeah.
And also getting the data out. Like we'll have operators stay on the same farm for 4 days.
Right.
Harvest is 6.
So that's where, you look at, from a harvest standpoint, it's something Ag Leader's coming with, next month or so. It's gonna be in the software release. Something 2020 is doing right now. I think Deere's doing it right now as well, as machines are inter-machine communication. So if you've got multiple machines in a field, they're not only uploading their data to the cloud as they're harvesting, but they're sharing it with each other. So you've got your overlaps, you've got automatic cut width, so you're getting accurate acreages and accurate yields. And that's huge to what you're saying. You've got an operator that's out there for days, and that information's just streaming back to where, and you guys are a little bit of an exception as far as your size. I mean, you don't have, we have a lot of owner-operator size farms, a lot of family farms, whereas out west you've got a more of a corporate level. You've got more employees, and you have an operator or manager who's managing the farm, to where he's looking at that data. And a lot of the data packages are set up kind of with that format. There's not a lot that's been set up to a grower level. I think we're seeing that change. I think we're seeing more user-friendly apps, iPad apps, things like that, to where, an operator can be, auto steer has pretty well become standard at this point on 100 horsepower plus. That's coming as an option from the factory, but it's all plumbed for the valving. We're putting it on more, probably 150 plus. It's just, they're going out with auto steer on them. We're seeing more and more 100 to 150 auto steer setups. I think we're seeing it in smaller farms, organic farming, fresh market vegetables, things like that, where they're using controlled traffic, where they're doing irrigation, they're doing drip tape to be able to come back and lay out that tape the same year in, year out. We're seeing more use for that. But for that guy that's doing that to have all that information with him, to where if the tractor's driving, he can look at his iPad and see what a helper here's doing or what a helper there's doing in the next field. Rain monitoring, we're seeing a lot of that, to where not only, it was nice to pull your phone out and look at the radar, but now you can pull your phone out and see what field got how much rain. That's all connected in. So as more and more of this connects in, more and more of these apps are going to become friendlier and easier to use for small operations. And I think that's a big thing. Stop rolling your eyes back there, James.
Is there any talk in the industry to standardize, I think it was hydraulic fittings in the 50s, every company had their own, it was just a nightmare, nothing worked. Will we ever see a yield monitor that will be able to be read across industry-wide?
That's funny. That's a common theme. The first session, the question was, from all these outside management things, the Instructor, the Monsanto cloud, all those, is there a way to get prescriptions into monitors? So, same vein, you want to get multiple monitors out into a common platform. Basically, the format should be a shapefile. That would be the easiest thing for most any of these aftermarket or developed platforms will import-export shapefiles with no problem. But then you've got Deere that has their particular format. You have Case that has their particular format. Ag Leader wants it as an ag setup file. That said, there has been in the past year developments to where a monitor will accept a shapefile. So from the cloud or from software to monitors is getting better. The other way, not so much. They still output in their proprietary format.
Won't Ag Leader read most of this format stuff?
Yes. Yep. So depending on what software you use, but if you had, say you're a primarily John Deere farm, you got a John Deere sprayer, John Deere tractors, you're probably running, or you were running Apex. It's now kind of morphing into the John Deere Operations Center. But you had a red combine. You can't read that red combine information in. So you need a third-party software to deal with that. So there is still some, it's just like ISOBus, as far as plugging an ISO implement into, say you've got an ISO-ready green planter and I plug it into a red tractor. It might work, but there might be a little glitch in something. Maybe the section control won't work. That was, a year ago, that was a big issue. We could do everything with a green planter, but we couldn't make the section control work because it was an ISOBus-ready planter except for that feature. So we're getting there, but there's still a lot of, it's a pie in the sky. The manufacturers support it, I don't think necessarily want it because they like some proprietariness. But that makes life difficult for us trying to make everything work together. So there have been some strides forward, but certainly not any great thing that I can say, yeah, a year from now, we're going to be able to read everything cross-read. There's a push for that from the community, but the industry is slow.
Historical observation back in the 80s, you had IBM compact computers. Eventually, when you had clone IBMs and the Chinese got involved, you may end up with that, with this equipment too. You're going to get some outside influence that says, hey, we're going to do it this way, and everybody has to join in. Or you get a monopoly.
Yep.
And there is only one brand anymore. But my question is more about cost and a general view about cost. With technology, with equipment, prices keep going up. Technology supposedly keeps getting cheaper, but everybody adds more bells and whistles all the time to hold the price and hold, the market and all that. Do you see a future in terms of cost, generally speaking, up, down? What do you see?
I see the past, I've been doing this for 11 years. So what I've seen in the last 11 years is cost has remained fairly level. The feature set comes up every year, just similar to a TV, similar to a computer. Cars, yep. You're getting, I got too many microphones on me. You're getting more features, more bang for your buck, but you're still paying the same buck. I mean, that TV that I bought 2 years ago for $1,000 is nothing compared to the TV I can buy today for $1,000. But I'm still going to pay $1,000 for that TV. So I think in the ag market, we see very similar.
Along that same line, how many of these new features are being abandoned by farmers because of the maintenance and going to the field and it doesn't work, and then trying to find a technician in a timely fashion to work on it? Is that a funnel we have at this point where we've got this technology, but maintaining it and supporting it is an issue, or is that a trend we see going away?
No, that trend's not going away. As far as the support load on us as precision specialists, I'll say we've continued to sell at a fairly high level. I don't think we've had a down year as far as selling technology in the past 11, but the load of support, and it's something because I think it'll get better as we get monitors that are capable of doing more. If I only use this monitor for, say if I only used it for yield monitoring, and then I don't touch it again for another 8-9 months or whatever, when I sit down in front of it, I go, huh. And I promise you the first reaction is not to pull out the owner's manual and read it and figure out how to use it again. It's you pull this out and you call somebody because it's just easier for you. As we see a monitor used for planting, used for spraying, used for harvest, that's when we start seeing the calls come in less. So the more integrated it becomes, I think it will become more secondhand using it, and we're going to see the functions retained.
Are we getting better of the connection between the monitor and the equipment you're trying to control, where you don't have breakdowns in that communication to the section control or sprayer nozzle or whatever?
We're kind of maxed out. I mean, that's pretty much everything right now uses CAN bus. CAN bus has a limitation as far as how much information it can pass. So just kind of imagine it's a 4-lane highway, and imagine it's Route 1 heading up and down through Delaware. It can handle so much traffic. To the point now where we're trying to do all the seed monitoring and the individual controls and looking at each individual row, how it's performing, tons of information coming from each one of those. Now we're trying to put the DC Beltway onto Route 1. So there's going to be a change. There's already been a change in the architecture in the Deere tractors. It's coming 2018 for the Case tractors, where they're changing more to an Ethernet style of communication than CAN bus, because you can carry so much more information on that network. So it's coming. I mean, we've kind of saturated what we can do now. So manufacturers are having to basically revamp their electronic systems to allow more information transfer. And then once you go cellular, you know, their 4G can transmit a lot more information than what 3G can. Yesterday I was supporting a Viper monitor, and he was in a good 4G area. So basically, I could watch him click, or I could reach in and touch the screen through the computer, and it was virtually real time. You know, full color real time, whereas traditionally on 3G, you end up with like a grayscale, and you have a 3-second wait between he does something and I see it on the computer. So we are seeing a better communication back and forth, certainly more robust communications. Stretching or talking?
A couple of questions, maybe. Do you see the benefit to an ag service provider of going to the highest level GPS with our machinery to match the GPS that the farmers have as far as their planning, so that we can do a better job, let's say side dressing with the new type nozzles and the split, because we're doing that all manual now, but if they're using like an RTK type system, and do you see a 120-foot boom with an RTK being able to be self-guided in that role? Second question I have is, do you see more and more customers using we have customers using a granular app to work with their data, and how is that overlapping with
Now,
the equipment manufacturers?
So, as far as using a higher level of guidance, one thing Deere has done in the past year is they've announced a cellular VRS solution as opposed to its towers. That's going to make it a lot easier for you as a service provider that's going clear from here to there. You're not jumping towers. If each tower is not surveyed in just exactly so, you end up with a position jump. If you're not using the same tower that the guy that planted it's using, you could be off position-wise. They've gone to a cellular-based, internet-based solution. I know the Eastern Shore is covered already, so that'll make it easier for you to go out. Your operator goes out, turns the display on. He doesn't have to worry about what tower do I need to connect to or anything like that. So that makes it easier for him. We do have 120-foot machines out running, dribbling on RTK. You can't really boogie. You've got so much mass on them. Depending on the ground conditions, it definitely fights a lot to keep it all in line, to keep it in the rows. A sprayer is the hardest platform to steer well, just because all four corners are loose. So controlling that and keeping it off the rows, if you have an 18-inch tire and you've got 6 inches to either side to play with, it's tight. So will it do better than an operator first thing in the morning? Probably not. Come about 1 o'clock after he's had lunch, yeah, it's probably going to do better. Come 8 o'clock at night when he's still out there running, because that's what you have to do, yeah, it's going to do better. So there is a benefit, I think. Also, if he has boundaries, RTK established boundaries, and you can use those boundaries with your equipment, that allows your shutoffs to be a lot more precise, keeps you from going outside of a field, making a mistake. If you use boundaries to the problem you had where you've got 2,000, 6,000 fields, if you've got a bounded field, you pull into it, that display knows what field it's in. It just sets that. You don't have to rely on an operator to get that correctly. And honestly, without RTK, boundaries are useless, because unless you're spot on, there's no point to making a boundary, because bad things are going to happen. Things are going to turn off when they shouldn't, or turn on when they shouldn't. So yeah, I do see a benefit in that. And then the squirrel left me on the second one. Granular app, yes. I do know guys using the granular app. I know I was just playing around on Deere's Operations Center yesterday, just poking and looking, and they do integrate with granular. I know that's something that Case's AFS Connect has reached out. It's their API. They've talked to Granular about releasing their information to that as well, so it's all seamless. It comes out of your combine and it's right on your app. So yeah, manufacturers are working with aftermarket companies. They're trying to create an open platform. It's just slow. How many people in here are using drones? Wow, I had 3 in the last session. They're a technology that I think, and James, I'm gonna put you on the spot here too. You can stand up and talk. They're something I've played with for a couple years, just playing with them as a hobbyist. I've had 3 generations of the DJIs, made videos with them, took some pictures of fields with them. Yeah, it's great, it's fun, it's neat, but it's not really useful. So in the past year, there have been so many platforms that have been developed to actually map fields, to use those consumer, almost toy-level drones that can guide them, control the camera, so you can get all georeferenced photos that you can stitch together into a map. There are the quadcopters, and they'll go out there. You can fly 40 acres a clip with them, depending on what resolution you're looking for, what elevation you're going at. Obviously, the lower elevation, you have a lot more flights to get your overlap. Fixed wings can go up for a lot longer. You can fly 400 acres an hour with them versus maybe 100 with a quadcopter, just because you're up and down with batteries on a quadcopter. It actually covers ground pretty fast. But so to start with, you're looking at the camera. You got your RGB camera, so you've just got a color composite picture. You add a near-infrared camera to that. Now you can start comparing that near-infrared to the red spectrum on your RGB camera, and you can start looking at NDVI values with that. You start using multi-specs, you can get red edge, and you can start using that, so you can use NDVI and NDRE as far as comparing, getting a better composite sample of something to make a decision on. I helped a customer
Or
get a field that had a lot of wind damage this past year, and before he went to harvest it, he was just curious how bad it was. So I flew over it and just taking color pictures, and he was able to, ahead of harvesting it, realize that, okay, I've got a chopping head that's not going to work well in this field because 30% of this field is flat on the ground. So he made arrangements to get a different head before he ever pulled into the field. So it wasn't a, get started and then shut down and try and punt. He didn't have to go out there and walk a whole field and probably never determine how much of it was down. So drones are, I like them. I'm a gadget person, complete and total gadget person. I love flying them. They're fun. Just looking as how they've grown so far in ag, I think that's going to be something we're going to see more and more of going forward. I know James has got one he's been working with. You have any insight on that?
I mean, from my perspective, ready to go drones that have value for a crop consultant in particular, and the opportunity to be able to scan a field quickly and determine where the problem area is. As far as a lot of the potential stuff, as far as being able to do NDRE and DDI, I think you've got the challenges to know the cost of the equipment. You're looking at a camera that's going to be in that $3,500 range, and then processing time, because it's very processor intensive.
that's something, you know, in August, they changed from being, you had to have a full pilot's license, you had to have a licensed visual observer, you had to call all the airports, you had to notify intention of flight, all that sort of information to, at the end of August. Now, anybody can go, they can study the workbook, they can go to the FAA test center for $150, take their Part 107 course, and now they're licensed to fly. You got still common sense, keep it under 400 feet, don't fly above people. Last week I was up at Penn State and we were teaching a class up there and I was flying a drone for them. We were about 1.5 miles off the end of the University Park Airport runway. So we did the right thing, we called into the tower and the guy was shocked that I was calling in, said he'd never had anybody call in before. So he didn't know really what to do with the information. I mean, I had all, you know, I'm flying at this altitude, I'm flying at this time, this is my registration number, and he was just shocked. He said, I've never had a call before. And so that's saying a lot of people are just flying. They're not doing that. And and that's around a airport with a tower. If you're a grass strip somewhere that doesn't have a tower, you're not calling into those. But any controlled airspace with an active tower, you are supposed to call in if you're within 5 miles of that flying. They didn't care, just told them where I was and when I'd be flying, and okay, that's fine. I mean, they're not going to be below 400 feet, but they just want to know that you're there so that anybody coming in, they can just say, hey, be aware, this is flying. So, but like James said, I think certainly from a standpoint of making your scouting a lot more efficient, I would say you hire a summer intern and you put him out with a drone and say, go fly. And then he can transmit that information back, and then you can go out and you can send somebody that's knowledgeable to go look at that spot. Say, okay, what's wrong with this spot? I can see there's something definitely wrong here. It's glaringly obvious. You know, we need to go here and we need to do something about it. So that's something I think we're going to see more and more. 5 minutes? Oh, I thought you were saying hi. So that's, I mean, primarily that's what's new and different. The biggest thing is that connectivity, and that's really what has changed in precision ag heavily in the past year. It's just more and more of your field work is being connected to the cloud, being connected to your managers, and I think we're going to continue to see that and hopefully see more integration from a standpoint of various manufacturers and the information becoming more universal and a lot easier to handle and easier to make decisions based off of. And that's, like I said, I think that's something Dr. Fulton's talking about tomorrow morning. So I'm gonna let him have all his thunder there. Any other questions, or is everybody hungry?
What about the drone kits? They came to us and tried to sell us a drone that I could draw a map of a field. And then just push a button and the drone took off. And when it took pictures and when the battery was 85% exhausted, it came back to you and told you you needed a battery.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about them, or they?
Yeah, that works. I mean, they flat work. I've played with them. I've done maps with them. I haven't. I mean, I've played with it as a hobbyist to this point. I'm not doing it for anybody, but just playing with it to learn it myself.
Yeah, it just dumbed them down for people like me.
Well,
Or you didn't have to take off or really do, you know, you put the camera in it.
not trying to be a salesman, but the fixed wing we have, you literally, if you have a field boundary, you have to take a field boundary in a shapefile, you bring it into the flight software, boom, it goes to the internet, finds out what the wind speed is, arranges the flight plan to match the wind speed over top of that boundary you've got. You give it a takeoff point, give it a landing point, and upload it. You grab the thing, get the motor started, tip it up 45 degrees and throw it, and then sit and wait, and it comes back and lands where it's supposed to. I mean, it is that easy. So, and the quadcopters, same thing. You got like drone deploy is one that's very simple to use. You can draw a boundary on your computer, and it just syncs to the app on the phone, and that quadcopter will go fly that pattern and come back and land right where it took off. So they've gotten a lot better. I mean, earlier generations of quadcopters were hard to fly. I've bounced them off a number of things. But now they're really idiot-proof. You just let go, it'll stop and stay right there, whether it has GPS or not. They've got cameras, they've got obstacle avoidance sensors. Drones have gotten a lot better. And then, like James said, I mean, just a visible camera, just a visible look at the field, you can tell a lot. Not with all the high-dollar NDVI or near-infrared lenses or multi-spec cameras. Just with a $1,000 drone, you can go out there and do a lot of work without having, instead of hiking a whole field, to go to that spot and find out what's going on. So, thank y'all. It's lunch.